For the last 8 weeks, we have been witnessing a genocide in Gaza, and one of the bastions of human rights apparently is Piers Morgan. He's someone who has tried to position himself as a neutral journalist while at the same time giving a very, very difficult time, interrupting and being rude to anybody who is pro-Palestinian.
It's outrageous. You censor.
And at the same time being very gentle and very easy with anybody who is a pro-Zionist.
So once again, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
We've seen him interview the likes of Andrew Tate, Mohammed Hijab, Low Key, Norman What's
wrong with you, bro? What the heck?
Norman Finkelstein.
Good job.
As well as some other pro-Zionists that I don't care about, to be fair. And one thing that has been noted is his aggressive positioning against anybody who is pro-Palestinian. And up until now, it's been fair to say that he is extremely pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist. However, one thing that we haven't been able to pinpoint specifically onto Piers Morgan is his stance on Islam. We've only seen this political stance since this genocide began. However, last night he interviewed a gentleman by the name of Abdul Wahab, Dr. Abdul Wahab, and it was clear to see from this interview that he exposed himself as a true Islamophobe, now putting the entire debate about Israel and Palestine into context for us about where his stance lies.
I see you.
This was an extremely uncomfortable interview to watch from one perspective, where you had Piers Morgan literally shouting, screaming, was physically agitated by the responses of Abdul Wahab.
Do you know what? I'm really struggling. I've got to be honest with you. I'm really struggling.
It did not matter what Abdul Wahab was saying. Piers Morgan had this aggressive nature about him that he wanted to push onto Abdul Wahab. And for many people watching this, I would say, in fact, the majority of people watching this, when you look at the comments, when you look at Twitter, you can see the majority of people who watched this all said the same thing, which is that this exposed Piers Morgan. Now, in this video, what we're going to do is break down exactly why it's time to pull the plug on Piers Morgan and make sure that he is now censored, or for want of a better word, cancelled from this for being a bigot, a racist, and an Islamophobe.
Yeah, boy.
So as we look at this video, from the very get-go, we can see that the title of this video, the title of this interview is Israel-Palestine War. That's bullshit. Piers Morgan debates Hamas with Islamist extremist doctor. Now, just from the title alone, you can see his bias here, saying that he is an extremist, an Islamist extremist. Why does he need to say that?
Welcome back to Uncensored. My next guest has been a GP with the NHS for 25 years, working as a mentor.
And there you go. As soon as the caption comes up, what does it say? It says, GP exposed as leader of extremist Islamic group. Abdul Wahid heads the Hizb ut-Tahrir group in the UK. Now, as somebody who grew up in the 90s, the noughties, in Britain, in Muslim Britain, if you will, Hizb ut-Tahrir were always known to be a fairly pacifistic and academic organization. You had these two organizations. You had Hizb ut-Tahrir and you had Al-Muhajirun. Al-Muhajirun were quite forthright in what they wanted. They were the more aggressive, more physical jihad rather than the academic jihad that Hizb ut-Tahrir went down, that line that they went down. And I think that's very fair to say for most people. Hizb ut-Tahrir wanted to re-establish the caliphate in the Muslim lands, the ones that Britain destroyed. But they were very staunch on the fact that this must be done through politics, through strengthening ourselves as an ummah rather than any form of physical jihad, which is reiterated by Abdul Wahid in this interview. However, Piers clearly didn't want to do his research and didn't want to look into the facts.
for recently qualified doctors at his surgery in Harrow, northwest London. Dr. Wahid Azif Shader has another less wholesome identity as leader of an Islamic
Why are you stuttering?
extremist group, which was recently caught on camera calling for jihad at an anti-Israel demonstration.
Okay, so what's the issue with having an anti-Israel demonstration? What's the issue with that? Why does that make him an extremist? I don't understand what the link is between the two.
What is the solution to liberate people in the concentration camp called Palestine?
Jihad!
What is the solution?
Dr. Shader, also known as Abdul Wahid, joins me now. Well, welcome.
You can just see how shocked he is from just that introduction. His eyes are just wide open like, okay, it's going to be one of those interviews, is it?
Yeah. Let me first just ask you your reaction to the clip we just played. These are members of your organisation and they're allowed chants of jihad on the streets of London. Do you think that's acceptable?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. That demonstration was a very carefully planned demonstration where the placards, the banners, the speeches from the platform were calling for a military intervention of official armies of Muslim countries to rescue the people of Gaza.
Okay, so he's acknowledged that that was a demonstration organized by Hizb ut-Tahrir, and what he's saying is that context has been left out. All they've shown is jihad fi sabilillah, the struggle of the soul for the sake of Allah. That's what jihad fi sabilillah means. But of course, if you're a right-wing fascist watching Piers Morgan and sitting there with your popcorn and your pom-poms waiting for those little taglines, you're going to see that and be like, fantastic, we've got them now, we've nailed them. And what Piers Morgan is doing here is actually inciting a form of racial hatred against Muslims by just showing that one clip out of context. But fair play to Abdul Wahid for providing that context and saying that what they're speaking about and what the conversation was of that event was that they were calling for the Muslim rulers, the Muslim leaders, to stand up and support the people of Palestine.
The banners, the speeches from the platform were calling for a military intervention of official armies of Muslim countries to rescue the people of Gaza, with a situation of a civilian population of 2 million who are being massacred and slaughtered. Anywhere else in the world, you would find it a completely straightforward thing for people calling for military intervention.
But they weren't chanting, we want military intervention. They were chanting jihad.
So what does that mean, Piers? What does jihad actually mean? Like, do your research. Why are you inciting this hatred against Muslims by saying that, oh, they weren't calling for military intervention, they were calling for jihad? Are you trying to say that jihad is the same as, for example, suicide bombers that the West loves to perpetrate and link to Islam, which has got nothing to do with Islam, by the way? Suicide is one of the gravest sins in Islam. So this whole notion that Muslims want to blow themselves up is absolutely preposterous, and only somebody who's an enemy of Islam would say that that is the case.
So my question for you is simply, do you support the chanting of jihad?
The chanting of jihad by somebody there, unscripted.
Well, quite a few people there.
Actually, no. It's about 2 people.
So you would condemn that?
Of course, I wouldn't condemn that.
You wouldn't?
No.
Yo, fair play to Abdul Wahid there, because he knows what jihad means, and he's being very forthright in saying that, no, I wouldn't condemn what's being said because it's not what you think that it means.
Because jihad in that context is as they understood it and they were chanting, is for the official armies of Muslim countries to enter and intervene. We're in a situation now, Piers, where 1% of the population of Gaza has been killed in the space of 2 months.
You know, this little that Piers is doing, that's literally as much empathy as he can show for the people of Palestine. We've seen it so many times when people are actually speaking about the death and destruction of Palestine. We hear this all the time from people. It's disgusting, it's despicable, and all he is doing is just allowing for a pause before he can then pounce, jump in and attack and use his famous line, I'm sure it's about to come up, is, do you condemn what happened on 7th of October? That is a clear sign of what's to come.
1% of the children of Gaza have been killed. Anywhere else in the world, you yourself called for military intervention in Ukraine by NATO with probably less legal and moral cause than there is in Gaza. When we stand...
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Because
So you think when Vladimir Putin illegally invaded Ukraine...
Piers, you're talking about an illegal invasion and that's really bad. Let's see where this is about to go.
The moral right of Ukrainians to respond is somehow equivalent to the moral right of people in Palestine after October the 7th.
There's this term cognitive dissonance that has been going around in the last 8 weeks, and I think we can see it here with Piers. He's saying the same things. He's saying when Russia illegally invaded Ukraine, you're saying that the Ukrainians didn't have a right to resist that illegal invasion, and that somehow is the same thing as in Gaza. No, it's not.
I'm saying that the people of Ukraine have actually one of the most powerful armies in the region.
It doesn't change the fact they were illegally invaded, does it, Doctor?
The people of Gaza have nobody helping them.
Well, they do. They have Hamas. They have a terror.
Have nobody helping
Well,
them.
hang on. They have a terrorist organisation called
They
Hamas.
have nobody helping
They've
them.
got 30,000 terrorists
They have.
who committed on October the 7th
They
an
have
act of
lined up
unspeakable
against them.
terrorism.
They have.
So, Abdul Wahid is comparing Ukraine with what's happening in Gaza, and he's saying that Ukraine have one of the most powerful armies in that region. And Piers' response to that, to Abdul Wahid saying that the people of Palestine have nobody, he's saying, well, they have terrorists Hamas. So I'm just trying to figure out what the definition of a terrorist actually is in Piers' mind. Because for me, I think it literally is, if somebody is a Muslim and they stand up for themselves, that person is somehow a terrorist.
Lined up against them the murderous Israeli Defense Force. They have lined up against them the United States, who this week, today in the Washington Post, it was said that the white phosphorus that's being used by the IDF is supplied by them. They have lined up against them the Britain and the EU. They have lined up against them the Arab rulers in the region who carry on their trade cooperation.
Listen, as I've made clear, Doctor, I think a lot of the response from Israel, particularly right now, I would deem to be testing everyone's sense of what is proportionate, right? There's no question. I do not subscribe to the view it's genocide. Well, hang on, let me
that is
finish.
the understatement of the century.
Possibly.
You know what Piers is doing? He's basically saying that, look, I've got black friends, so I'm not racist. You know, that's what he's saying. Is like, oh, you know, I think that what is going on in Palestine and, you know, the response of the Israelis, you know, it's getting to a point where you have to ask questions, but it's not a genocide. And Abdul Wahid smashed it there. He's like, that's the understatement of the century.
But I think they have a right to defend themselves against a terror group.
So do the Palestinians not have a right to defend themselves? Like, why has nobody asked that question to Piers?
And
who have gone on record in the last 2 weeks as saying they want to do what happened on October the 7th again and
of the
again.
children of
I
Gaza.
understand. It's horrific. It's horrific.
It's beyond horrific.
Well, it's horrific,
because
right?
literally what we are watching on our phones, on our laptops, on our TVs is an extension of what's been happening since 1948.
But let me play you your reaction. All right, I understand. Let me play you after
I understand, but let's just move on from that.
October the 7th, a few days later, you took part in a talk on YouTube and you said this.
Brave Mujahideen, they gave the enemy a punch on the nose. All right? And it's a very welcome punch on the nose.
How can you categorize a terror attack in which 1,200 mostly innocent civilian people were brutally attacked, raped, tortured, beheaded, and murdered? How can you, a British NHS doctor or NHS...
So he's perpetuating this word rape, and again, it's a rape allegation that is unproved. And he might say, well, the Israelis have said that that's what the case is, so that's what it must be. But then when Palestine and the Palestinians give their numbers and give their accounts, he just throws it in the bin, dismisses it, says, oh, it's Hamas numbers. Even though the actual numbers that are being reported out of Palestine are actually considered by all independent parties, for example, the UN and other independent organizations are saying that the numbers being reported by Palestinians, aka in his case Hamas, are actually lower than what the real number is. So it's an underreporting from the Palestinian side and an over-reporting and an over-exaggeration and very selective facts being given from the Israeli side. And let's not forget, the way that Israel reports their facts are very, very unfactual. For example, lest we forget the calendar.
Says, we are in an operation, the operation against Israel.
Saying that these are all, Israeli targets when it was just a calendar saying Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Pathetic.
Doctor, in Britain, how can you say that's a welcome punch on the nose?
Will you let me answer fully?
Yes.
I will be frank. I'll be as concise as I can be. But if you give me the courtesy of letting me answer fully.
Okay.
I will defend the right of the Palestinians to resist an occupation. When you look at that...
That's not resistance, that's terrorism.
When you look at what happened...
So that was 8 seconds. So Abdul Wahid said, will you give me the courtesy of answering this? Piers said, and he gave him 8 seconds. 8 seconds is all Piers gave him to give him his response. And it gets worse from here. At this point, this is where things get even worse.
And the 7th of October, as if that is the day that everything started.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that, but when people look at
Do you think
that,
what happened that day was a terrorist attack?
when people look...
Do you? Do you?
You know, the word terrorism has become so politicized.
Actually, not really.
The word
you can
terrorism...
be deeply sympathetic to the plight of Palestinian civilians, which I am, by the way.
Clearly, Piers.
And have expressed many times. What you can't do is be weaselly-mouthed about what happened on October the 7th.
And this is where the beginning of the insults begin. So he started off by saying weaselly-mouthed. Takes one to know one, doesn't it, Piers?
I asked you to let me finish.
That was a grotesque
I will
terror
ask
attack.
you to finish.
Yeah, but you're equivocating about it being a terror attack.
I'm not equivocating, and I will explain why. Okay, the word terrorism, by the way, in India last month.
We're going to talk about India. Talk about what's happened
the word
here.
terrorism in India. People who supported the Australian cricket team have been arrested under terrorist offences. In the West Bank, people who are have been told, if you reveal what happened in the prisons, you will be arrested on terrorist
charges. Do you think what happened October the 7th was a terror attack?
He just literally glosses over what Abdul Wahid said. He's saying that the word terrorism has become politicized in the sense that anybody who doesn't like what the opposition does can just point their finger and say terrorist act. But in the West, obviously they have a favor and support to Israel, so anyone who opposes Israel is a terrorist, and Israel are fighting for their freedom. So, Abdul Wahid does touch upon this in a few seconds.
It's a
Did you say
resistance.
no?
It's a resistance.
Not a terror attack.
Piers, and it's
You're
if
an NHS GP.
So what does that have to do with anything? So he studied, got his qualifications, and he helps people. But the fact that he refuses to call what you want him to call, Piers, a terrorist attack, he's saying it's a resistance, which it is. It's a resistance against an occupation. An occupying force does not have a right to defend themselves because they are already the aggressor. And that's under international law.
I'm asking you to let me finish. Right, our Islamic standard in conflict, in warfare, our Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, you can't kill children, you can't kill women, you can't kill the elderly, you can't mutilate.
Hamas did all that.
If anybody did that,
What do you mean if?
I say if because...
They literally broadcast it on their own streaming platforms.
Well, I'll tell you what a lot of us saw.
Hamas broadcast it merrily to the world. And here's us doing these terrible things.
And
what do you mean if?
What many of us saw on that day were videos coming out showing people saying, we will not harm women, we will not harm children.
Do me a favour.
No, that's what...
Doctor...
I'm saying that.
Yeah, and we saw, for example, that the accounts of one of the women who said that the Hamas fighters came into her house, stayed in her house for several hours, ate a banana, and then left. And even asked for permission to eat the banana as well. So there is this difference in what the actual eyewitnesses were saying and what the IDF have been saying. But obviously, Piers only wants to listen and further the words of the IDF rather than even looking at the accounts of the eyewitnesses there.
Resistance is a right in Islam. It's a right in international law. It's even a right that Churchill said in his History of the English-speaking peoples that is, he actually wrote in that book, it is a primary right of men to kill and die for the land they live in.
You literally
And he
just
went-
read me a
he went-
description
he
of
went-
what people who follow Islam are not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And Hamas did all of those
And then-
things.
and-
but your response is to say, well, hang on, I've seen videos of them saying, we don't want to do that stuff.
No, yes,
I find that pretty offensive, Doctor.
I find...
We all know they did it because
find it-
they boasted to the world with their own videos what they were doing.
I find it amazing that respected journalists like yourself have seemed to have suspended their critical faculties.
No, I'm believing what Hamas wanted me to see.
Well, you're believing what you saw.
No,
I'm telling you,
what
this is
Hamas
a
themselves
resistance-
broadcast to the world because they wanted to take great glee in what they'd done. There's no ambiguity about it.
I asked you to let me finish, and I'm going to...
You've got to answer questions.
I will answer the question. Let's agree on a principle. If atrocities were committed, right, I will never condone them, right? I will say that.
So do you condemn what happened on October the 7th?
If atrocities are committed, you know who's
What do you mean
responsible?
if? No, they were.
Who's responsible for it then?
So you don't condemn it?
Okay, who is responsible
The Jews
for it?
brought it on themselves.
Very divisive language. He's saying, oh, so the Jews brought it upon themselves, did they? So he's making this a religious conflict rather than a political conflict, one about land, rather than it. What he's saying is that it's no, this is a religious conflict.
No, actually, I would say more than that. I would say the powers that believe that Israel should be a colony for themselves in the Middle East, they are the ones responsible.
Do you know what? I'm really struggling. I've got to be honest with you. I'm really struggling. A British National Health Service doctor of 25 years, a man who's supposed to be seeing patients all day, every day and putting them right, is incapable of saying what happened when it was literally broadcast to the world by a terror group. Nor do you think they're terrorists. You think it's resistance. You seem to want to go either way to justify it. You don't even believe what they showed us with their own technology. And I'm just curious. Do you think any of this is compatible with you being a doctor in the National Health Service?
So here we have it. Here is Piers' very quick descent into him trying to get Abdul Wahid fired from his position of being a doctor, which in Piers' own words was over 25 years. So in over 25 years, this doctor has not only kept a good reputation for himself, but he also mentors junior doctors to then go on to become full practicing doctors themselves. But apparently, because he doesn't condemn the atrocities that happened on October 7th the way that Piers wants him to, and now let's be very clear here. Abdul Wahid said, if atrocities took place which go against Islamic principles of war, then I will condemn that. But Piers does not accept that because he wants Abdul Wahid to just outright say, whatever the Israelis have said, the accounts of what the Israelis have said, that must be true and you therefore must condemn it all. Abdul Wahid is saying, whatever the truth is, if it goes against those principles that you don't harm innocent men, women, children, animals, etc., then I will condemn that. But this is the point that Piers is absolutely losing his mind on, and now things get very, very physically worse for Piers in terms of him being very agitated now. Watch.
You don't have to be a doctor.
Do your patients know that you believe these things?
You don't.
What a stupid question. Do you think that these doctors have time to sit there and say to their patients like, oh, what's your political views? Or do you think that the patients even care to ask their doctor, what's your, I've got this shoulder injury, or, I've got cancer, or I've got some problem with my lungs or my limbs. But what's your political views? That's what I want to know before you treat me.
You have to be a doctor to care for the lives of 2 million people in Gaza. You don't have to be a doctor.
I'm concerned about whether your patients here in this country, where Hamas are a prescribed terrorist organisation.
And I've said,
they're listening to this interview, do these patients know your views?
I have said to you.
Do they know your views?
I don't talk to my patients about my views in a 10-minute consultation, do I? Nobody does that. It's just a foolish question, isn't it?
Yeah, well done, Abdul Wahid. It's good that you're calling him out. A lot of people, they do try to rub or massage Piers Morgan's ego in order to curry some sort of favour with him. However, just call a fool when you see one.
That's a foolish question. Yeah, nobody talks to.
Why do you use a
patients.
different name?
So again, Piers, what are you trying to do here? You're trying to say that he's deceiving people somehow by using two different names. I'll explain it in a second. Let's just carry on and hear what Piers has to say here.
I use my name.
Well,
My
you don't.
name-
You have two names. One, the leader of the group.
Yeah, Abdul Wahid is a name that family, friends, and other people call me.
Right.
Actually, even some people.
But that's
at
not the
work-
name you use at work,
actually,
right?
Even some people at work. And Wahid Asif Shader is my legal name, which people use in other forums. That's not a very unusual thing.
Okay, so just to give a slight explanation as to the whole name thing, obviously using the name Abdul Wahid Asif Shafer is quite long for most people to say. Now, Abdul means the slave of, right? And Wahid is the name of Allah. So if anybody uses the name of Allah in their name, they'll always have the term Abdul before that. That's why, for example, there's people called Abdullah, the slave of Allah, Abdul Wahid, the slave of Al-Wahid, right? So what he's done is he has removed and dropped the Abdul from his professional name in order to make it easier for people to actually converse with him. And in some ways, this is actually something to help build bridges and remove barriers between himself and his non-Muslim colleagues. So it's actually probably a favor that he's done for his colleagues to call himself, just call me Wahid. It was very simple.
2023, a
Piers,
prominent...
no, I have to... No,
I'm going to ask you another
You
question.
did not give me the courtesy
You know
of letting
why?
me
Because
finish.
your answers were so outrageous.
You censor. That's your answer.
No.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
censor. The person doing the censoring is you.
No,
with
you are
respect,
censoring.
Who wants me to
You are
try and
censoring.
understand and believe that what Hamas showed us, boasted about, with their own technology, broadcasting it to the world, was not what we saw. That's called censorship.
Well,
that is actually the purest personification
I tell you
of
what,
censoring the truth I've ever encountered.
When you bring Mark Regev onto the show, and you question him, lightweight questioning, albeit lightweight questioning about the atrocities that have happened.
Well, you think
since
it's lightweight? I actually ask you difficult questions.
Actually, you don't ask difficult questions. Yeah, you completely accept. You sit there and listen to the most ridiculous explanations.
Unlike you and your answers, you mean?
Well, you don't give me the chance to say.
No, I've heard your answers.
No, you didn't.
I have.
You didn't.
I have.
You didn't.
You don't. Well, okay. Let's do a little quick fire.
You're telling the answer.
Let's do a little quick fire recap. Do you think Hamas are a terror group?
I believe it's a resistance organisation.
Okay. Do you think what they did on October the 7th was a terror attack?
I believe that if civilians got killed on that day, it is appalling. It is appalling.
You're a doctor, man.
It is appalling.
You're a doctor in
I
the
also
NHS.
believe.
Yes, he is a doctor and he's somebody who looks at the facts rather than just listening to what his paymaster is telling him.
What do you mean
also
if?
believe
1,200 people got massacred.
And 1% of the population.
I can
Gaza
share your
died.
concerns about what's happened.
You know you don't.
Oh, no, I do.
No, you don't.
No, I do.
16
I do.
years.
But
16
I cannot
years they
believe
live in
a
prison
doctor
camp.
is saying the word
16.
if people got victims of atrocity. If. On October the 7th. How can you say that?
So what? You tell me this. What is a proportionate response to 16 years
let's
of living in a
focus.
cage?
No.
What is a proportionate
Not
response?
a terror attack.
If they just attacked IDF...
Yeah, I've asked many times what is proportionate,
so do you
right?
accept that? So you're saying just to attack the IDF would have been acceptable?
I personally do not believe...
Answer that.
I'm answering
Is just to
Let me
attack
answer
the
your
IDF
question.
acceptable?
I'm going to say this.
We might be able to agree.
I
I
think the strategy at the moment...
Can we answer
Let
that?
me answer the
If
question.
they had agreed-
Let me answer the question. Let me answer the
yes
question.
Yes or no? If they had just attacked military targets, acceptable?
My view of what they're doing is I don't think it's going to work. I don't think the IDF is going to eradicate Hamas. And if that is the mission statement, and in the process, they kill tens of thousands of innocent men, women and children, if they do that, I think they will radicalise an entire new generation and make it worse. That's my honest view of what I'm now witnessing. But let me come back to...
That's why.
Hang on.
So Piers, who gets very frustrated when somebody doesn't respond to his questions in the way that he wants them to, will just lose his absolute mind. But when Abdul Wahid has asked him a very direct question, if it was only the IDF who were killed on that day, would that be acceptable? And his response is, I don't think that the IDF killing all the Palestinians is actually working. He's not responded to the question.
That's why when we talk about a military intervention, what we want.
But Doctor, what happened on October 7th wasn't a military intervention.
No.
It was a terror attack.
What we want as a military
intervention. And you don't even think
intervention-
it happened, do you?
What we want is a military intervention from Muslim armies rescue a beleaguered people and replace an apartheid
Palestinian
system.
people have to be given the same human rights.
Would you do me the respect?
They have to be
not
given. I will
no.
interrupt you. It's not your show. You don't just talk forever.
So what he's saying is, it's my show and I get to talk forever. I think this is the problem with Piers, is that he's just a little child, a little baby who, this is my show. Why aren't you just playing to my whims and desires? And if you don't, then I'm just going to shout at you because it's my show. I'm not going to answer any of your questions, but you have to answer all of my questions in the way that I want you to. Otherwise, I'm going to shout at you. I'm going to sensationalize. I'm going to sensationalize what you're saying and your position, and I'm going to pin you into the corner as some sort of radical, extremist, terrorist element that we must throw into prison, that you don't deserve to be in this country, and you don't even deserve to be a doctor. That's in essence the strategy and the tactic of Piers Morgan.
Well,
right?
What's the point of asking?
I'm going to tell you what I think about the
saying to
Palestinian
me-
plight, which I've talked about many times. You've obviously missed it. I think they should be given the same human rights as everybody
You
else.
think that
Oh, how noble. How noble of you, Piers.
And
75
particularly the
years
same
they've been
rights of the
occupied.
Israelis. I think it's been a
You think-
75-year conflict with...
No, conflict.
Yes, a conflict. Yes, a
where,
conflict.
Where people have been driven out
Yes,
of
a
their homes.
conflict.
750,000
Yes,
people in
it's
the Nakba.
wrong. That was wrong.
Encroaching on
That
the
was
West
wrong.
Bank more and more and
That
more.
was wrong.
No,
So have been all the wars launched against Israel.
I think Piers just said there, without realizing it, that he thinks Israel is an illegal occupation because he said that was all wrong. But then he quickly said, no, but then I think everything that's happened to Israel has been wrong as well. It's like, do you just take a second to think about it? Like, just really think about it. If someone just stole your house, do you think that is wrong to kick that person out of your house? Apparently Piers doesn't, so,
That's been wrong. All of it is wrong. Right? The history shows this is a conflict riddled
Things
with
didn't
wrongs on
start
both
on
sides.
Yeah, and history also shows that if things only started when the Zionists went there 75 years ago, isn't that where the problem lies?
7th of October.
No, it didn't. I never said it did.
Well, you seem to.
No, you don't even think it happened
the
October
whole
the 7th.
framing of your debate,
you
Piers.
don't even think it happened.
I do think it happened.
Oh, you did
I
happen.
do
It
think
did happen.
It did
1,200
happen.
people were massacred, weren't
I
they?
think 1,200 people were killed.
Were they massacred?
Yeah, they were killed.
Right,
They
by
were killed.
terrorists?
They were killed by people who were resisting an occupation.
Bullshit.
And
they're terrorists.
Yeah.
So, Piers Morgan, he literally, this is kryptonite. This is actually kryptonite for Piers Morgan because he's now up against somebody who is an intellectual, somebody who has been debating, somebody who has been a teacher for the Muslim communities in Britain for decades now. And I'm sure he's come up against this type of media sensationalism before. And what he's doing is he's being extremely, extremely poignant and saying that I do believe, obviously Piers is giving some sort of fake criticism of him, saying that, you don't even believe that it happened. He's, you're denying October 7th. He's saying, no, I'm not denying October 7th. I believe 1,200 people were killed. But what you're saying, Piers, is that it was all innocent civilians. And that's not the case. And that all 1,200 were even killed by Hamas. The Israelis released footage of their own Apache helicopters shooting festival goers themselves. There's videos and footage of those festival goers looking up at those Apache helicopters in fear and thinking, what's going on here? So what Abdul Wahid is doing is, in a similar sense to how the Israelis are saying, there's a fog of war, we don't know all the facts. He's saying, well, look, we don't know all the facts, but I do believe 1,200 people were killed. The innocent lives that were killed, yes, that is condemnable by Islamic law, and just as human morality, you would always condemn any innocent civilians that are being killed in a conflict. That's not what should happen. But obviously Piers doesn't feel the same way about that for the Palestinian people. The over 20,000 that have been killed now. Over 20,000. Around 10,000 children. We're not even including women into this. We're just saying 10,000 children have been killed since this conflict started.
Yeah, well, that's your view.
It is my view.
Yeah,
And by the way, it's the
and
view
so-
of any person who is not Israeli or Palestinian, right? Anyone can look at it and go...
I disagree with that. I
okay.
disagree with that. One man, have you not heard
Let me-
the
I
adage,
wanna-
one man's terrorist is another man's freedom
Yeah.
fighter? Have you never heard
Again,
that?
bullshit.
Have
Bullshit.
you never heard that?
Let me just play. I want to just read you this. In May 2023, Luqman Makim, who's a prominent member of your organisation, called for an end to the secular order so that, quotes, the UK will no longer be able to pump its liberal filth, its LGBT filth, its feminist filth into the heart of the Muslim world. Do you agree with him?
I agree that the West is pumping secular democracy into the Muslim world.
So now this conversation is where it takes its Islamophobic turn. So up until now, it's been very clear that Piers Morgan is pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist, and in this segment, the last 5 minutes of this interview, Piers Morgan takes a very dark, sinister, racist, Islamophobic turn towards Abdul Wahid and in this conversation, and starts off by asking him his views on liberalism and LGBTQ. This is where it's clear to see that Piers Morgan is trying to get Abdul Wahid fired from his job as a GP from the NHS, which is something which is a shortage of. We need more doctors. And guess what? Guess what, to all the right-wingers who are watching this? Guess where those doctors are going to come from? They're going to come from abroad. It's going to be immigrant doctors who will take less pay. So actually, Piers Morgan is your worst enemy with what he's trying to do here by trying to get somebody like Abdul Wahid with over 25 years of experience as an NHS GP, somebody who mentors and trains other junior doctors. He's trying to get him fired here for his religious stance, the views of his religion, and hey, the views of other religions as well. So even Piers claims to be a Christian, doesn't he? What does Christianity say about LGBTQ? What does Judaism say about LGBTQ? Why is he only asking a Muslim about his views on LGBTQ? Let's get into this because it gets worse and worse by the minute.
And
Doing LGBT filth?
I agree that actually what we want to see in the Muslim world is a system with an accountable government, right? An elected leader, upholding family values, right? We want to see an economic system where wealth is circulated.
Do you believe in equal rights for gay people?
I believe that actually the Islamic standard of law should be the standard of law in the country. Obviously, that's the standard I believe in.
And I believe, just to clarify, what is your view of homosexuality?
I believe homosexuality is a sin.
A sin, it's wrong. So when gay people come to your practice, do you treat them?
Oh, of course.
Why?
Because I treat all my patients with kindness and without
Do you tell them
discrimination.
you think what they do is a sin?
What an absurd thing to say.
Yeah, it's a very absurd thing to say for two reasons. One, because the fact of the matter is you don't have a conversation with your patients about their personal lives unless it is some sort of sexual disease that has been spread. And I'm not just saying that only homosexuals have sexual diseases. No, of course not. But if there's somebody with a sexual disease that comes in, you'll ask about their sexual experiences, their sexuality, and you can provide your care and attention based off of that. If somebody walks in with a chesty cough, you're not going to be saying to them, hold on, mate, are you gay first? Because if you are, I'm not going to treat you. How ridiculous are you, Piers? Literally, how ridiculous are you? The second reason why that is absolutely absurd is because what Abdul Wahid has said here is that we view homosexuality as a sin, which we as Muslims, we do see it as a sin. We're not saying that it's something that is punishable by death or anything like that. We're just saying it's a sin. And what do we say to anybody who is a homosexual? That homosexuality does not take you out of the fold of Islam. It's something which is sinful to act upon. It is not something sinful to have thoughts of. And it's equivalent to, for example, if somebody who is drunk and walks in to their clinic and needs help, or if he's walking down the road and he sees somebody who is drunk and they've collapsed and they've knocked out, do you think that he's going to not treat him because he's drunk? Like, are you stupid, Piers?
Why wouldn't you be
Why would
upfront
I
about
say
that?
that? Why would I say that? Because they don't come.
Why don't you try going back to your surgery
tomorrow?
tomorrow?
They don't come to me.
Why don't you go to surgery tomorrow and say, before we go any further to your patients,
What?
I want you to know what I think. I think that I agree with the guy who said
do you
this
understand
country
that-
is full of LGBT filth, feminist
do you
filth.
understand-
I don't think Hamas are a terror group. I don't think what they did on October the 7th was a terror attack. And by the way, do you want me now to treat you?
Do you understand what?
I don't understand any of that.
Professional integrity is.
I don't understand any of that, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Piers, you are an absolute tool. And I say tool rather than fool, because a fool would have to probably think for themselves and just do the wrong things. You are just a tool, mate. You're being used and you're trying to screw other people.
You
understand
think that's
that?
professional integrity?
No, I think professional integrity is treating the people I treat with respect and with kindness.
How do I know
and with
you do?
fairness. Well, they know I do.
Do they?
Oh yeah.
Do they?
Oh yeah.
Do they know you think they're filth?
I didn't say that they're filth.
You agreed with what he
I
said?
didn't agree with what he said.
You said, I agree.
No, I agree.
I can play the tape back if you like.
So let's play the tape back and actually see what he said.
Pump its liberal filth, its LGBT filth, its feminist filth into the heart of the Muslim world. Do you agree with him?
I agree that the West is pumping secular democracy into the Muslim world.
And he said that I agree that the West are trying to pump LGBTQ and liberalist values into the Muslim world. So, again, you've been debunked, Mr. Morgan.
I agree with the fact that the Muslim world should have the Islamic system. Yeah, I didn't say I agree with it. I don't use words
You
like
want
that
full
about
Sharia
people.
law for this country?
For this country. I'm working for, our group works for Islam, the restoration of Islam in the Muslim world.
What about here?
We work to uphold Islamic values in our personal life and in the Muslim
What about,
community.
do you want
and we
Sharia
actually
law
try.
here or not?
I would love, you know what?
You'd love it?
No, I tell you what, in this last 2 months, one of the strangest things has been where people here have been looking at the people in Gaza and they've been going and looking and reading the Quran. And they've been looking at it, and I'd invite you and your audience to do that.
Just to clarify.
I would do that. And
clarify, you would like Sharia law here?
And they are not convinced by these
Doctor.
neocon
Would you like Sharia
Islamophobic
law here?
tropes and caricatures of Islam, are they?
Actually, I don't think...
People who...
All I've done is ask you straightforward questions.
Yeah.
You've revealed your beliefs in the answers. No. Yeah, you have. You may not even realise what you've done, but you have.
I believe in Islamic law, and I don't believe in the caricature that you try and present of Islam.
Would you like Sharia law in this country?
I would love to see you want Sharia law in this country.
I don't want...
Abdul Wahid, bro, you absolutely smashed it with this one. Because what he's saying is, he's actually making a form of dua for Piers and saying, look, I wish guidance for you. Because if you became Muslim, then of course you would want Sharia in the place where you live. Obviously, Piers, is just, certain people, their hearts are just hardened by money, right? And, it's very clear to see that somebody like Piers Morgan is controlled by money. And we know this because a few years ago, he was actually defending Muslims against Tommy Robinson.
No, Winston Churchill.
You're sounding like a complete
Winston
lunatic.
Churchill. No, I'm quoting previous, some of the best leaders in this
No,
country.
you're sounding like a bigoted lunatic.
No, I'm not.
Somebody that basically...
Winston Churchill
you
said,
are an
Winston
Islamophobe.
Churchill,
But that was whilst he was working for ITV. Now he's working for Talk TV, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, somebody who is a staunch Zionist, somebody who funds settlements. This is the stance that he's taking. And obviously remember that Piers Morgan got this job after being fired for his views. So he's on thin ice. There's not many places that he could possibly go after this and have such a position and such clout, but it's all based upon attacking Muslims.
Sharia law in this country.
Well, that's your wish.
But you would.
Yeah, but I
Would you?
I believe it's the best system, but
So
I'm not working.
Would
to
you like
establish-
it in this country?
I'm not working.
Yes or
to
no?
say- I believe in Islamic.
Yes or no?
These.
Yeah, this is where Piers takes a very, very extreme turn now, because obviously we can see that this conversation has gone from October 7th and the plight of the Palestinian people and the history of the Palestine-Israel conflict, aka when Zionists came in, kicked the Muslims out of their land, kicked the Palestinians out of their land, because let's not forget that Palestine was filled with Jews, Muslims and Christians all living together side by side, coexisting peacefully until the Zionist regime came in and caused corruption upon that land. Now, so that's where it started. And obviously where we're going now is we're talking about Islam and his views on Islam in Britain. And this is where Piers now reveals himself to be an extreme Islamophobe and racist.
Islamic civilization
Yes or no?
was the only
You'd be
civilization.
very quick to answer everything else. Yes or no?
The Islamic civilization was the only civilization that brought peace to the Middle East for Muslims, Jews, and Christians. I would love to see that system there. Wouldn't you like to see a system?
Who pays
Wouldn't you
your
like
salary?
Wouldn't you like to see a
Who pays
system
your salary?
where Muslims, Jews, and Christians would live
I don't
side
want
by
this
side
country
in
to
the
live
Middle
under
East?
Sharia law.
It's not talking about this. I'm talking about the Middle East.
No, but you suggested you wanted it to be under Sharia law here.
You suggest.
Do you or not?
You
Well, do you or not? What's funny?
What's funny is your approach of question.
Why?
Honestly.
Just answer the question.
Because you know why it's funny.
Yes or
about
no?
it.
You either do or you don't.
Abdul Wahid literally is kind of speechless at this, because he sat in front of this person now who he would have seen on interviews with other people like Muhammad Hijab, etc., etc. And you possibly watching on the sofa have this idea of how would I tackle this person? You know, what is the way that I would go about this? And he's just laughing because he's probably sitting there thinking like, this guy is an absolute muppet, absolute clown, and he's literally trying to put words in Abdul Wahhab's mouth by saying, oh, you wanted Sharia in this country. You like, look at him, he's physically agitated. He cannot control himself. He's already sworn a couple of times already, saying, oh, that's bullshit, don't ever criticize the facts that Israelis give. Very, very interesting. And this is where he now makes a very, very Islamophobic remark.
Right? I ask a question. The answer is yes or no. Why can't you say yes or no?
I believe in the Islamic system.
Would you like
will be
Sharia
the
law in
only-
this country?
I would love.
Yes or no?
I would love to see you want.
No, answer the question. Never mind what I want. What do you want?
I want to see the Islamic system re-established.
Would you like
in the Muslim
Sharia
world.
law in this country? Last time I'm going to ask
If
you.
Sharia law,
Just yes or no.
if Sharia law means upholding family values, means looking after the poor,
Means no gays,
looking
no
after the
feminists,
poor.
i.e. women who get above
That's
themselves,
your
right?
caricature. No, that's your
Oh, I know what Sharia law wants for
Why
women.
why do so many women become Muslim these days? Why do
Because they
so
want to
many
be
women in the
oppressed.
West?
Is that what you're going to tell me?
No. Why do so many
Because they want to be oppressed.
women in the world become Muslim these days?
You tell me.
Wow. So Piers Morgan just lost it there. And I think that this is enough for the people watching this to really see how he is exposing himself as an Islamophobe. He said there about Sharia law, he goes, oh, I know about Sharia law. Abdul Wahid is saying, why is it that if you know so much, why is it that women are accepting, English women are accepting Islam in their droves? And his response is, oh, because they want to be oppressed. Is that what it is? Because they want to be oppressed. Saying that Muslim women are oppressed and people who convert into Islam want to be oppressed because that's what Sharia is. That's what Islam is. I think that is very telling, very offensive. I myself was very offended to hear that. I think feminists should be very offended by that as well. Do women not have a right to choose their faith? Do women not have a right to choose what they wear? I think this is where liberal feminism comes at a bit of a clash to what true feminism is. And I believe that feminism is something that is rooted within Islam. To give women rights was something that Muslims gave. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, this was revealed in the Quran to give women their rights at a time when women were looked at as property. And now Piers Morgan is saying that any woman who converts to Islam clearly just wants to be oppressed. I think, Piers Morgan, you should apologize for what you've said here. I think you should come out and I think you should speak to women who have reverted to Islam, English women who have reverted to Islam, not on your show, because if it's your show, then no one's allowed to ask any questions of you. No one's allowed to say anything that you don't like to hear. So no, I don't think that they should come onto your show. I think you should sit down with some sort of Muslim revert woman influencer, some YouTuber, I don't know any off the top of my head, and you should sit down and you should ask them, why did you become a Muslim? What was it about Islam that attracted you to this religion? Rather than just being an absolute prick.
Well, I don't. You better ask them.
Well, why don't you tell me what you think?
They seem to find it something that attracts them, Islam.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Many women in the West become Muslim, and for some reason,
Yeah, I think at this point, I don't know if Piers has something in his ear, someone in his ear talking to him, but I think at this point he's actually realized what he said, because he's now backing down. He's not really going forward with this argument, and yeah, it's quite clear to see that he possibly has some regret over this, which is a good sign, Piers. If you do regret what you said, it's a good sign, but ultimately it was your natural instinctual reaction to what was being said. And yes, it's very offensive. And yes, you need to apologize for what you've said.
they seem to like the fact that it's.
Do you work with women doctors?
Yes, I do. And
how do they feel about your views on this?
I keep a very strict professional line between my.
Do they know
my
what your views are? When they watch this, they're going to be surprised.
Some of them will know, some of them will not know. Okay. Some of them will know, some of them will not know.
Okay. Doctor, thank you for coming here. I appreciate it. You've been enlightening with your responses. You may not realise quite how enlightening, but...
Yeah, I think Dr. Abdul Wahid, mashallah, congratulations. You were very enlightening. And what you actually enlightened us on was Pierce's stance towards Muslims. And it explains exactly why he's taken such a pro-Israeli stance to this conflict, because ultimately his paymasters are Zionists and the opposition are Muslims, and it's very clear that he has a hatred for Islam, he has a hatred for Muslims, he even has a hatred towards women who convert to Islam, saying that, oh, they just want to be oppressed. That is what you said, Piers. You might not realize how much this was an enlightening conversation for all of us.
You might find out when you see the reaction. But I appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, this is your reaction, Piers. And if you look at your comments, you'll see the reaction of thousands of other people who have all unequivocally said that you lost not only this conversation, but you lost a lot of credibility as well. And well done to Abdul Wahid. That was a complete mic drop at the end. If you've got to this part of the video, don't be cheeky, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.